"Ma'am, please don't drink that. I saw your son pour something into your juice." The security guard leaned close, his words low and deliberate. I had invited my son and his wife to dinner at the most expensive restaurant in the city. A celebration, I thought. A gesture of family. A way of honoring my husband Robert's memory. The chandeliers scattered diamonds of light across the room. White tablecloths stretched like snow. Silverware whispered against porcelain. And in front of me, the glass waited. Cranberry juice. Deep red. Still. Almost black in the shadows. For a heartbeat, I could not move. The words pressed into me like ice. My own son. My only child. My hand slid to my purse, steady despite the tremor in my chest. Evidence. Survival. Control. The instincts of someone who had lived long enough to know betrayal. When it finally showed its face, I glanced at the glass once more, its surface catching the chandelier's glow. Red. Silent. Waiting. And in that moment, I understood. My son had not come to celebrate. He had come to end me. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I signed the sale papers on a Thursday afternoon. $58 million. The number sat in my bank account like a stone in water. Robert's company was gone now. Sold to a national chain with clean trucks and computerized dispatch systems. They kept his name on 2 locations. A courtesy. Nothing more. I was 70 years old. The circle was closing. That evening, I called my son. Ethan's voice came through bright and warm. He said we should celebrate. He said Mom deserved something special. His wife Claire got on the line. She said they'd been talking about this moment for weeks. I agreed to dinner. Saturday night. The best restaurant in the city. 3 weeks earlier, I had signed the final contracts. Robert had been gone 4 years by then. Pancreatic cancer. 11 months from diagnosis to death. The company survived him because I learned the routes, the payroll, the maintenance schedules. I kept his desk exactly as he left it. But I was tired now. The phone calls from buyers had started coming regularly. Good offers. Fair terms. I chose the one that promised to keep some drivers on staff. Ethan had asked about the sale twice. Both times, his tone stayed casual. Both times, Claire's voice hummed in the background. I told him the number once it cleared. His silence lasted 3 seconds too long. Then came the exclamations. The pride. The suggestions about celebration. I should have recognized the shift right then. Saturday arrived cold and clear. I wore the navy dress Robert bought me for our 40th anniversary. Pearl earrings. Practical heels. My arthritis had been kind that week. I could walk without wincing. The restaurant occupied the top floor of a historic hotel downtown. Chandeliers caught the light and scattered it like diamonds. White tablecloths stretched across the room in perfect rows. Waiters moved like shadows between tables. Ethan and Claire were already seated when I arrived. He stood to hug me. His cologne was new, expensive. His suit looked freshly tailored. Claire's dress shimmered under the lights. Silk, probably. Her makeup was flawless. They looked like victory. I sat down slowly. The chair was high-backed velvet. Too soft. It made me feel smaller than I was. Ethan ordered wine immediately. French. The sommelier nodded with approval. Claire touched my hand across the table. Her fingers were cold despite the warmth of the room. She told me I looked beautiful. She told me Robert would be so proud. Her words came quick and rehearsed. Ethan raised his glass. He made a toast to family. To legacy. To new beginnings. I lifted my cranberry juice. No alcohol. My medications didn't allow it anymore. The crystal clinked together. The sound was bright and fragile. Dinner arrived in stages. Small plates of things I didn't recognize. Foam and reduction and microgreens. Everything tasted like expense. Ethan talked about the business. He asked questions about the sale. His interest seemed genuine until I noticed his eyes. They weren't on me. They were on my reactions. Measuring. Calculating. Claire mentioned their house. She said the market was challenging. She laughed and called it an adventure. Her laugh didn't reach her eyes. I asked about their finances. Just casual. Just motherly concern. Ethan's smile tightened. He said everything was fine. He said they were managing. Claire touched his wrist. A warning or a reminder. I couldn't tell which. The main course came. Beef Wellington. The pastry cracked under my knife. Blood-red juice pooled on the white plate. Ethan excused himself. He said he needed the restroom. Claire went with him. She said something about touching up her makeup. I sat alone at the table. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation. Silverware whispered against porcelain. Someone laughed 3 tables over. I looked at my drink. Cranberry juice in a wine glass. The liquid caught the chandelier light. Deep red, almost black in the shadows. A man in a dark uniform approached from my left. Hotel security. His name tag read Victor in small brass letters. He was young, maybe 30. His expression was carefully neutral. He leaned down close to my ear. His voice came low and urgent. "Ma'am, I don't mean to alarm you. But I saw your son put something in your drink. From a small vial, while you were looking at the menu." The room didn't spin. My heart didn't race. Some part of me had been expecting this. Some part of me already knew. I looked at Victor's face. No humor there. No mistake. I asked him if he was certain. He nodded once. "I'm certain. I've been watching your table since you arrived. Your daughter-in-law signaled me earlier. She seemed concerned about something." I started paying attention. I looked back at my glass. The red liquid sat perfectly still. My hands were steady when I picked up my purse. I told Victor thank you. I told him I understood. He asked if I wanted him to call someone. "Police. Management." "Not yet," I said. "Not here." Ethan and Claire returned together. Their faces were composed, relaxed. They sat down like nothing had changed. Claire asked if I was enjoying the meal. Ethan refilled his wine glass. I picked up my cranberry juice, held it to the light, pretended to admire the color. Then I shifted in my seat. My hand trembled just slightly. The glass tilted. Red liquid spilled across the white tablecloth. The stain spread fast and dark. I gasped, made a small sound of dismay, reached for napkins. Claire jumped up to help. Ethan called for the waiter. Everyone moved at once. In the confusion, I folded the soaked napkin. The fabric was heavy with juice. I pressed it into my purse, hidden beneath my wallet and reading glasses. I apologized, said I was feeling unwell. Stomach trouble, maybe something I ate earlier. Ethan's concern looked genuine. He offered to drive me home. Claire suggested calling a doctor. I waved them off, said I just needed rest, said I'd take a car service. They shouldn't let me ruin their evening. They protested, but not too hard. I left the restaurant slowly. Victor held the door. Our eyes met for just a moment. Outside, the October air bit cold against my face. The car service arrived within minutes. I gave the driver an address across town. Not my home. Somewhere else. Inside the car, I held my purse in my lap. The napkin inside was still damp. Evidence. The city lights blurred past the window. I thought about Robert's hands. Calloused and strong. The way they held mine during chemotherapy. The way they shook at the end. This money was his sweat turned into dollars. His early mornings and late nights. His pride and his pain. And my son had tried to poison me for it. The car turned down a quiet street. Medical buildings lined both sides. I'd called ahead from the restaurant bathroom. Before dessert was served. Before I knew I'd need to run. An old friend from Robert's time ran a private laboratory. Discreet. Fast. He owed Robert a favor from years ago. The building was dark except for one lit window on the third floor. I stepped out of the car. My knees ached from the cold. From the shock finally catching up. But I walked steady. Head up. Purse tucked under my arm. Inside, Dr. Yao was waiting. He was 83, retired officially, but still kept one lab running for special cases. He took the napkin without questions. Said he'd have results by morning. Said to go home and rest. I couldn't rest. I sat in his small waiting room. Plastic chairs and fluorescent lights. Medical posters on the walls about heart health and diabetes prevention. The irony wasn't lost on me. Dawn came slowly. Gray light through dirty windows. Dr. Yao emerged at 6:15. His face was grim. Beta blockers, he said. Concentrated. Enough to stop your heart. Especially at your age. With your medications. I asked if it would have looked natural. He nodded. Classic heart attack presentation. No one would have questioned it. Not at 70. Not with your history. I thanked him. Paid in cash from my purse. Took the written report he sealed in an envelope. Outside, the city was waking up. Cars passed. People walked dogs. A woman jogged by with headphones in. Normal life. Continuing. I stood on the sidewalk and made a decision. No police. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The headlines would destroy Robert's name. Widow poisoned by son over inheritance. The company he built reduced to gossip and shame. I would handle this my way. I called Diana Brooks from the street corner. She answered on the second ring despite the early hour. Robert's goddaughter. My lawyer for 30 years. Sharp as broken glass and twice as loyal. I told her everything. The restaurant. Victor. The test results. Her silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then she said 3 words that changed everything. We'll destroy them. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Diana arrived at my house before 8 that morning. Her car pulled into the driveway while I was making coffee. Black sedan. Quiet engine. She didn't believe in wasting time. I opened the door before she knocked. She wore a gray suit and carried a leather briefcase. Her hair was pulled back tight. No jewelry except her wedding band. Diana had always understood that power didn't need decoration. The coffee finished brewing as she set her briefcase on the kitchen table. Robert had built this table himself. Oak. Solid. It had survived 30 years of family dinners. Now it would hold evidence of family destruction. I poured 2 cups. No cream. No sugar. We'd never been women who softened things. Diana opened her briefcase with a metallic click. She pulled out a yellow legal pad and 3 pens. Blue ink. She was old-fashioned that way. She asked me to start from the beginning. Everything I remembered. Every detail. I told her about the dinner. The wine. Ethan's new suit. Claire's cold fingers. The way they looked at me like I was already gone. Diana wrote in neat columns. Time, location, witnesses, evidence. She asked about Victor. I gave her his full name from the business card he'd slipped into my purse. Hotel security. 10 years on the job. No disciplinary record. Credible, Diana said. Very credible. I slid the lab report across the table. The envelope was still sealed. Diana opened it with a letter knife from her briefcase. She read slowly. Her expression never changed. When she finished, she looked up at me. Her eyes were the color of steel. "This is attempted murder," she said. "Clear and prosecutable. We could have Ethan arrested by noon." The clock on the wall ticked steadily. Robert had bought it at an estate sale. The sound had measured out our entire marriage. I thought about the headlines. The news cameras. Robert's name attached to scandal and greed. The company drivers reading about poison in the tabloids. "No police," I said. "Not yet." Diana set down the report. She asked what I wanted instead. I wanted them destroyed. Completely. Every asset. Every hope. Every dream they'd built on my death. But I wanted it quiet. I wanted it surgical. I wanted them to feel exactly what they'd tried to do to me. Diana picked up her pen again. She started a new page. At the top she wrote strategy. First, she said, we gather everything. Financial records. Communications. Medical history. We build a case so airtight they can't breathe. Second, we let them think they're winning. We give them hope. We let them believe the inheritance is coming. Third, we take everything away. Not just money. Not just assets. Everything. The coffee had gone cold in my cup. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked twice. Morning sounds. Normal life. I asked Diana how long this would take. She said 3 weeks. Maybe 4. Her firm had investigators. Former FBI. Former IRS. People who knew how to find things others wanted hidden. I told her to start immediately. She made phone calls from my kitchen table. Her voice stayed calm and professional. She used terms like forensic accounting and comprehensive background screening. She mentioned my name only once. The rest was client and subject. By 9:30, 3 investigators were assigned to the case. By 10, they had subpoena-ready requests for bank records. By 11, surveillance was arranged. Diana worked like a surgeon. Precise. Methodical. No wasted motion. She left at noon. Told me to act normal. Answer Ethan's calls. Sound tired. Sound grateful. Sound like a woman whose time was running short. The door closed behind her. The house felt enormous and empty. I hadn't lived alone until Robert died. 52 years of marriage. Then silence. I'd gotten used to it. But today the quiet felt different. Heavier. Like the walls were holding their breath. My phone rang at 1:15. Ethan. His voice came through warm and concerned. He asked how I was feeling. He said they'd been so worried when I left the restaurant early. I told him it was just my stomach. Old age. Nothing serious. He asked if I'd seen a doctor. The concern sounded genuine. Almost. Not yet, I said. I'll rest today. Maybe tomorrow I'll call Dr. Morrison. Ethan said that was good. He said to take care of myself. He said Claire sent her love. Then he paused. Just a beat. Just long enough. He asked if I'd given any more thought to estate planning. He said it gently. Carefully. Like he was worried about upsetting me. I told him Diana and I had an appointment next week. We were setting up a family trust. Making sure everything was organized properly. The relief in his voice was unmistakable. He said that was smart. He said Robert would have wanted that. He said he and Claire were here to help with anything I needed. I thanked him, kept my voice weak, kept my words slow. We hung up after another minute of empty reassurances. I sat in Robert's old recliner. The leather was cracked now, worn soft by decades of his weight. I could still smell his aftershave in the fabric if I pressed my face close enough. He would have handled this differently. Robert believed in confrontation, direct and immediate. He would have driven to Ethan's house that same night. But Robert was gone. This was my fight now. The investigators worked fast. Diana called 3 days later. Tuesday afternoon. Her voice was tight with controlled anger. The financial picture was worse than expected. Ethan and Claire were drowning. $2 million in debt. Credit cards maxed at their limits. 2 mortgages in default. Car payments 3 months behind. Luxury debt, Diana called it. The kind that comes from trying to look wealthy instead of being wealthy. But there was more. Private loans. The dangerous kind. From lenders who didn't use contracts or courts. They used other methods. Ethan owed $200,000 to a group in Atlantic City. The interest was compounding weekly. The deadline was November 1st. 3 weeks away. Diana said the inheritance wasn't greed anymore. It was survival. They needed me dead before that deadline. The October light through my windows turned gray and cold. I asked about Claire. What was her part in this? Diana's silence told me everything before her words did. Claire had been busy. Very busy. She'd visited 6 art galleries in the past month. High-end places. Auction houses. Private dealers. At each one, she'd introduced herself as Robert's daughter-in-law. She'd mentioned my declining health. She'd shown photographs of the paintings Robert had collected. The paintings hung throughout my house. 12 pieces. Some were worth thousands. 2 were worth significantly more. Robert had bought them during good years. Investments in beauty, he'd called them. Claire had been getting appraisals. Getting bids. Setting up sales for after my death. Diana emailed me the gallery recordings. Security footage. Time-stamped. Claire's voice was clear and confident as she discussed my imminent demise. I watched the videos 3 times. Each time, the rage grew colder. More controlled. More deadly. These paintings were Robert's soul. He'd chosen each one carefully. This landscape reminded him of his childhood farm. That portrait looked like his mother. The abstract piece matched the chaos he felt building the business. Claire had reduced them to inventory. To liquidity. To debt payment. I called Diana back. My voice was steady when I spoke. No more patience, I told her. No more waiting. We take everything from them. Everything they have. Everything they hope for. Everything they are. Diana asked if I was certain. I looked at Robert's portrait on the mantel. Wedding day. His smile was wide and genuine. His whole life ahead of him. I told Diana I'd never been more certain of anything. She said she'd accelerate the timeline. 1 week. Maybe less. The trap was nearly ready. We just needed the perfect bait. I knew exactly what that would be. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The bait was simple. I would play dying. Diana called it strategic theater. I called it survival. Either way, the performance had to be perfect. Thursday morning, I called Ethan. My voice came out thin and wavering. Not forced. Just tired. The kind of tired that comes from 70 years of living. I told him I'd been having chest pains. Nothing serious. Probably just stress. But Dr. Morrison wanted to run some tests. Ethan's concern flooded through the phone. Immediate. Almost panicked. He asked which hospital. He asked when. He offered to drive me. I said no. Diana would take me. I didn't want to be a burden. The word burden hung in the air between us. Heavy with implication. Ethan said I was never a burden. He said family took care of family. His voice cracked just slightly on the last word. Good acting. Or maybe real fear. Fear that his investment might die before he could collect. I told him the appointment was Monday morning. Early. 8 o'clock. Just routine. He said he'd call to check on me. He said to rest this weekend. He said Claire was lighting a candle for me at church. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so vicious. We hung up. I sat in the kitchen with cold coffee and colder thoughts. The investigators delivered their final reports Friday afternoon. Diana spread them across my dining room table. Thick folders. Color-coded tabs. Photographs. Bank statements. Credit reports. Phone records. The evidence told a story uglier than I'd imagined. Ethan had been planning this for months. Maybe longer. The forged medical power of attorney was dated July 15. 3 months before the company sale was even finalized. He'd used it to access my complete medical history. Every prescription. Every diagnosis. Every weakness my body had accumulated over 7 decades. High blood pressure. Irregular heartbeat. Osteoporosis. Arthritis. The catalog of aging. He'd studied me like a textbook. Found the perfect weapon. Beta blockers would mimic a natural heart attack. Common in elderly women. Expected, even. No one would question it. Diana showed me the search history from devices traced to Ethan's office. The queries were clinical and methodical. Fast-acting heart attack drugs. Lethal dosage for elderly woman. How to fake natural death. Undetectable poisons for seniors. Each search was time-stamped. Each one was another nail in a coffin he'd been building for me. The folder also contained Claire's activities. 6 gallery visits. 12 phone calls to art dealers. Email correspondence about estate liquidation. She'd even contacted an auction house about Robert's watch collection. Nothing was sacred. Nothing was safe. They'd inventoried my entire life like a warehouse clearance. The private loans were documented too. Payment schedules. Threat assessments. Diana's investigators had recordings of phone calls from the Atlantic City lenders. The voices were calm and professional. But the message was clear. Pay by November 1st or face consequences. Unspecified but unmistakable. Ethan and Claire had 3 weeks to find $200,000. Plus the other debts. Plus the mortgages. Plus the cars. My death was their only solution. Diana closed the last folder. Her hands were steady but her jaw was tight. She said we had enough for criminal charges. Attempted murder. Fraud. Forgery. Elder abuse. Ethan would face 15 to 20 years. Claire would be charged as an accomplice. The prosecution would be straightforward. The evidence was overwhelming. Any jury would convict. I looked at the folders stacked on Robert's table. His table. Where we'd eaten thousands of meals. Where Ethan had done homework as a child. Where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays and ordinary Tuesdays. All of it had led here. To this moment. To these folders full of betrayal. I asked Diana about the alternative. The quiet way. The way that wouldn't destroy Robert's name along with Ethan's freedom. She said it was possible. Difficult but possible. We'd need leverage. Total leverage. Something that would force them to surrender everything without a fight. I asked what that would look like. Diana explained the plan. We'd create a family trust meeting. Schedule it for next week. Tell them it was time to finalize the inheritance structure. During that meeting, we'd present everything. Every piece of evidence. Every crime. Every lie. Give them a choice. Prison or surrender. If they chose surrender, they'd sign away all inheritance rights. Transfer their house to a foundation. Disappear from my life permanently. No contact. No appeals. No second chances. If they chose prison, we'd file charges immediately. Full prosecution. Maximum sentences. Public trial. Either way, they'd lose everything. The only question was whether they'd lose their freedom too. I asked if this was legal. If we could enforce such an agreement. Diana said yes. With the right documentation and witnesses. The signatures would be binding. The alternative would be criminal conviction. Any court would uphold it. The autumn light through the windows was fading. 4:30 in the afternoon. The days were getting shorter now. Winter was coming. I told Diana to schedule the meeting. Wednesday, 10 o'clock. Her conference room downtown. She asked if I was ready for this. If I understood what it would mean. Ethan was still my son. Blood was still blood. I looked at the evidence folders again. The medical records he'd stolen. The searches for ways to kill me. The calculations about how fast I'd die. Blood didn't mean anything anymore. Blood was just another word for betrayal. I told Diana I was ready. More than ready. I wanted to watch them realize what they'd lost. She packed up the folders. Locked her briefcase. Promised to have everything prepared by Wednesday morning. After she left, the house settled into evening quiet. The furnace kicked on with a low rumble. Heat pushed through the vents. Robert had replaced this system 2 years before he died. It still worked perfectly. Everything he touched lasted. Everything he built endured. I walked through the house slowly. My knees ached, but I ignored them. Pain was just information. It didn't have to stop you. The paintings hung on every wall. Robert's choices. Robert's taste. His way of capturing beauty in a world of grease and moving trucks and early mornings. This landscape was from our trip to Montana. 40th anniversary. We'd driven 12 hours to see mountains that looked like God's teeth. That portrait was from an estate sale in Philadelphia. Robert said the woman's eyes reminded him of his mother. Strong. Unbreakable. The abstract piece was chaos made beautiful. Robert bought it after his first $1 million year. He said it showed what building something felt like. Messy and wild and worth it. Claire had photographed all of them. Sent the images to dealers. Discussed prices and commissions and shipping logistics. She'd turned Robert's soul into a spreadsheet. The rage in my chest was cold now. Controlled. Surgical. Like Diana's approach to the law. I made tea in Robert's favorite mug. Chipped handle. Faded logo from a truck stop in Nebraska. He'd carried it for 30 years. Refused to replace it. The tea was too hot to drink. I held the mug anyway. Let the heat burn my palms. Proof I could still feel. Still endure. Monday's hospital appointment was real. Dr. Morrison had scheduled it weeks ago. Annual checkup. Routine blood work. Nothing dramatic. But Ethan didn't know that. Ethan would be waiting by his phone. Hoping for bad news. Praying for crisis. I would give him hope instead. Just enough to keep him hungry. Just enough to lead him into Wednesday's trap. The tea cooled slowly. Outside, streetlights flickered on. One. Then another. Then the whole block glowing in the darkness. 3 more days until the meeting. 3 more days of pretending. 3 more days of letting them believe they'd won. Then the hammer would fall. And I would watch them break. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. Rain tapped against the windows. October rain, the kind that promised winter was close behind. Diana picked me up at 7:30. Her sedan was warm inside. Classical music played softly through the speakers. Something by Bach, orderly and precise. The hospital was 15 minutes away. We drove in comfortable silence. Diana had never been one for small talk. Neither had I. Dr. Morrison's office smelled like antiseptic and old magazines. The waiting room held 6 other people. All of them gray-haired. All of them waiting for bodies to betray them in new ways. A nurse called my name at 8:15. Blood pressure, weight, temperature, the routine measurements of aging. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. Dr. Morrison appeared at 8:30. He was 62, young by my standards. He'd taken over the practice when old Dr. Chen retired. He reviewed my charts on a computer screen, asked about pain levels, sleep quality, appetite, energy, the standard questions. I told him about the chest pains. Small lie, necessary lie. I described them as occasional. Mild, probably nothing. His expression shifted to concern. Professional and appropriate. He ordered an EKG. Just to be safe. Just to rule things out. The test took 20 minutes. Cold gel on my chest. Electrodes stuck to my skin. The machine beeped and hummed. Drew its conclusions in waves of electrical activity. Dr. Morrison studied the results. His face relaxed. He said everything looked normal. Strong rhythm, no irregularities. My heart was aging well. Relief would have been appropriate. I manufactured it for his benefit. Thanked him. Said I'd been worried. He prescribed nothing. Recommended nothing. Told me to come back if symptoms worsened. Otherwise, see him in 6 months. The appointment ended at 9:40. Diana drove me home through rain that had turned to mist. She asked if I was ready for tomorrow. The meeting. The confrontation. The end of everything. I told her I was ready. I'd been ready since Saturday night. Since the restaurant. Since the poison. Back home, I called Ethan at 10:15. My voice was carefully modulated. Tired but relieved. I told him the doctor said everything was fine. Just stress. Nothing to worry about. Ethan's disappointment was microscopic, hidden beneath layers of false relief. But I heard it. The tiny pause. The fraction of a second where his brain recalculated. He said he was glad. Said he'd been praying. Said Claire had been so worried. Then came the question I'd been expecting. He asked about Wednesday. Diana had called him yesterday. Something about the trust meeting. Final paperwork. I confirmed it. 10 o'clock. Diana's office downtown. The Turner Family Trust would be finalized. Everything would be properly arranged. Ethan said they'd be there. Wouldn't miss it. This was important. This was family. His voice carried the weight of relief. Of a plan back on track. Of death delayed but inheritance secured. We hung up after meaningless pleasantries about weather and his work and Claire's volunteer activities. All of it hollow. All of it performance. The day stretched ahead empty and waiting. I spent it with Robert's things. His desk in the study held 40 years of papers. Tax returns. Business licenses. Employment records. He'd kept everything organized. Filed by year. labeled in his precise handwriting. I pulled out the folder marked 1985. The year he started the company. 3 trucks. 2 employees. 1 office in a warehouse district. The photographs showed him younger. Hair dark. Face unlined. Standing beside a moving truck with his name painted on the side. Robert Turner Moving and Storage. Pride radiated from that photograph. Pure and uncomplicated. The pride of building something from nothing. I remembered that day. I'd taken the picture. Used our old Polaroid camera. The film had cost $5. Robert said it was worth it. Said he wanted proof this moment happened. Now that company was gone. Sold. Absorbed into a national chain. The trucks repainted. The name reduced to courtesy. But the money remained. $58 million. Proof that sweat and hours and calloused hands could become something permanent. Ethan wanted to take it. Claire wanted to spend it. Neither understood what it actually represented. The afternoon passed slowly. Rain continued. I made soup from a can. Ate it standing at the kitchen counter. Washed the bowl immediately after. Living alone taught efficiency. No reason to let dishes pile up. No one else to blame. No one else to clean up after you. Robert had been messy. Not dirty. Just scattered. He'd leave coffee cups on his desk. Newspapers spread across the couch. Tools in the garage exactly where he'd dropped them. I'd spent 52 years picking up after him. Never complained. That was partnership. That was love. You carried what the other person couldn't. But Ethan had never learned that. Ethan believed family meant inheritance. Assets. Automatic wealth transfer. He'd never understood that family was work. Daily. Constant. Unglamorous. Claire came from the same school of thought. She'd married Ethan for potential. For the promise of money. For the Turner name and what it might eventually deliver. Neither of them had ever asked about Robert's early years. The poverty. The struggle. The nights he came home exhausted and broke but still believing tomorrow might be different. They wanted the result without the story. The wealth without the work. Tuesday morning brought no rain. Just cold gray sky. November weather in October. Diana called at 9. She confirmed everything was ready. Conference room reserved. Documents prepared. Witnesses arranged. Security notified just in case. She asked one more time if I wanted to involve the police. Make this official. Make this criminal. I said no. This was family business. It would end as family business. Quiet. Complete. Final. Diana accepted my decision without argument. She'd been Robert's goddaughter. She understood loyalty. She understood that some justice happened outside courtrooms. The rest of Tuesday vanished into preparation. I chose my clothes for tomorrow. Navy suit. Pearl earrings. The same outfit I'd worn to Robert's funeral. Armor disguised as respectability. I practiced my expression in the bathroom mirror. Neutral. Calm. Unmoved. The face of a woman who'd made a decision and wouldn't be swayed. Evening came early. 4:30 and the light was already dying. I turned on lamps throughout the house. Pushed back the darkness. Made the rooms feel occupied instead of empty. Ethan called at 6. Casual check-in. He asked if I needed a ride tomorrow. He offered to pick me up. Take me to Diana's office. I declined. Said Diana was already planning to drive me. But I appreciated the offer. I appreciated him thinking of me. More lies. More performance. One more night of pretending. He asked what I'd been doing today. Making conversation. Filling silence. I told him I'd been going through old photos. remembering Robert, thinking about legacy and what mattered. Ethan said that was good. Said it was important to remember. Said Dad would want his legacy preserved properly. The irony cut like glass. Sharp and clean. Robert's legacy was about to be preserved. Just not the way Ethan imagined. We ended the call with promises to see each other tomorrow. With false warmth and manufactured affection. With all the words that families use when they've stopped meaning anything real. I ate dinner at 7. Chicken breast. Steamed vegetables. Food as fuel. Nothing more. The house settled into nighttime quiet. Furnace humming. Refrigerator clicking. The sounds of empty rooms and mechanical systems. The sounds of living alone. I went to bed at 9. Early. But sleep wouldn't come easily tonight. Too much anticipation. Too much anger still waiting for release. Tomorrow everything would end. Tomorrow they'd understand what they'd tried to take. Tomorrow I'd watch their faces as reality destroyed their plans. The ceiling above my bed was dark. Shadows moved across it, tree branches outside the window. Wind pushing them back and forth. Restless. Reaching. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Wednesday morning broke clear and cold. Frost covered the grass outside my window. First frost of the season. The kind that killed the last flowers and promised harder days ahead. I dressed slowly. Navy suit. Pearl earrings. Practical shoes. My hands were steady as I fastened each button. Each clasp. Each small preparation. The woman in the mirror looked ready. Composed. Unbreakable. Diana arrived at 9:15. Early. She always built in buffer time. Another thing I appreciated about her. The drive downtown took 20 minutes. Traffic was light. Wednesday morning. Most people already at work. The city moved at its regular pace. Oblivious to what was about to happen. Diana's law firm occupied 3 floors of a glass tower. 20th through 22nd. The elevator was quiet. Efficient. We rose without feeling the motion. The conference room was on 21. Corner office. Windows on 2 sides. The city spread out below us. Small and manageable from this height. A long table dominated the center. Polished mahogany. 12 leather chairs. Everything designed to convey power and permanence. Diana's assistant had arranged folders at each seat. Color-coded. Tabbed. Professional. 2 other people waited in the room. A paralegal named Marcus. Late 30s. Precise movements. And a notary named Sarah Chen. She'd witnessed 1,000 difficult signatures. Her face showed nothing. Diana reviewed the documents one final time. Her fingers traced each page. Checking. Verifying. Ensuring perfection. She asked if I wanted water. Coffee. Anything to steady my nerves. My nerves didn't need steadying. I'd been steady since Saturday night. Since the restaurant. Since I'd understood what my son had become. The clock on the wall read 9:53. 7 minutes until scheduled start time. Ethan and Claire arrived at 9:55. Exactly on time. Not early. Not late. They understood the importance of appearances. Ethan wore a charcoal suit. New. Expensive. Probably purchased on credit that would never be repaid. Claire's dress was cream-colored silk. Tasteful. Understated. The costume of inherited wealth. They entered smiling. Confident. Ethan hugged me. His cologne was subtle. Designer. Claire kissed my cheek. Her lipstick left no mark. We sat at the table. Ethan and Claire on one side. Diana and I on the other. Marcus and Sarah positioned at the ends. Witnesses. Silent guardians of what came next. Diana began with formalities. She thanked everyone for coming. She outlined the purpose of this meeting. The establishment of the Turner Family Trust. The proper distribution of assets. The securing of legacy. Ethan nodded along. His expression was attentive, respectful. He looked like a dutiful son preparing to honor his mother's wishes. Claire's hand rested on the table. Her wedding ring caught the light. 3 carats. Platinum setting. Another debt they couldn't afford. Diana opened the first folder. She explained the trust structure. How assets would be managed. How distributions would occur. Her voice was steady, professional, giving nothing away. Ethan asked intelligent questions. About tax implications. About investment strategies. About timeline for asset transfer. He wanted to sound involved. Knowledgeable. Worthy. Diana answered each question thoroughly. She let him believe he was participating. She let him think this was a negotiation. Then she opened the second folder. The shift was immediate. Her tone changed. Became harder. More formal. She said there were some matters that needed addressing before we could proceed. Ethan's smile flickered. Just slightly. Claire's hand tensed on the table. Diana pulled out the first document. The toxicology report. She slid it across the table. Explained what it showed. Beta blockers. Lethal concentration. Designed to mimic heart attack. The color drained from Ethan's face. Claire's breathing quickened. Visible. Audible. Diana continued. She produced the restaurant security footage. Time-stamped. Clear. Showing Ethan's hand. The vial. The motion over my glass. She added Victor's written statement. Hotel security. 10 years experience. Credible witness. Willing to testify. Ethan tried to speak. His mouth opened. Closed. No words came out. Diana wasn't finished. She pulled out the financial records. $2 million in debt. Defaulted mortgages. Maxed credit cards. Private loans from Atlantic City. Payment deadline November 1st. 2 weeks away. 14 days to find money or face consequences. Claire made a small sound. Something between a gasp and a sob. Ethan's hand found hers under the table. Gripping. Desperate. The next documents were worse. The forged medical power of attorney. Dated July 15th. Notarized with a fake witness. Used to access my complete medical history. Diana read aloud the search queries from Ethan's devices. Fast-acting heart attack drugs. Lethal dosage for elderly woman. How to fake natural death. Undetectable poisons for seniors. Each phrase landed like a hammer blow. Each one documented. Time-stamped. Undeniable. Ethan finally found his voice. He said this was a misunderstanding. A mistake. He could explain everything. Diana held up one hand. Silence fell immediately. She wasn't interested in explanations. She produced Claire's gallery recordings. 6 locations. 12 calls. Appraisals of Robert's paintings. Discussions of my declining health. Estimates of when assets would become available. Claire's tears started then. Real. Messy. Destroying her careful makeup. Diana laid out the final evidence. Phone records. Text messages. Email correspondence. A complete timeline of planning. Plotting. Preparing for my death. The conference room felt airless. 21 stories up. Windows that didn't open. Nowhere to run. Nowhere to hide. I hadn't spoken yet. Hadn't moved. I sat perfectly still, watching them realize what they'd lost. Diana explained the legal reality. attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, forgery. Each charge carried years of prison time. Federal and state. Consecutive sentences possible. The evidence was overwhelming. Any prosecutor would take this case. Any jury would convict. Their lives were over. Completely. Irrevocably. Ethan was crying now too. Quiet. Controlled. But tears ran down his face. He looked at me finally. Really looked at me. He said he was sorry. He said he didn't know what he was thinking. He said the debt and the pressure and the fear had made him crazy. The words meant nothing. Apologies couldn't undo poison. Couldn't erase searches for how to kill your mother. Couldn't restore what had been destroyed. Claire begged. She said they'd pay everything back. She said they'd do anything. She said please, over and over. Please. Diana let them finish. Let them exhaust themselves. Let silence fill the room again. Then she presented the choice. Option 1. Criminal charges filed immediately. Full prosecution. Maximum sentences. Public trial. Media coverage. Complete destruction. Option 2. Sign documents surrendering all inheritance rights. Transfer their house to a foundation. Accept lifetime restraining order. Disappear forever. Never contact me again. Never speak my name. If they chose option 2, no charges would be filed. The evidence would remain sealed. Their crimes would stay private. They'd lose everything but their freedom. They had 60 seconds to decide. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second falling like a stone. Ethan looked at Claire. Claire looked at the documents. The evidence. The proof of everything they'd done. Ethan picked up the pen Diana offered. His hand shook so badly he could barely hold it. He asked where to sign. Diana pointed to the lines. Multiple documents. Multiple signatures. Each one severing another connection. Each one confirming another loss. Ethan signed first. His signature was messy. Barely legible. Nothing like the confident scrawl I remembered from birthday cards and holiday notes. Claire signed next. Her tears fell on the paper, smudging the ink. Sarah the notary witnessed each signature. Made it official. Made it permanent. The documents went into folders. Filed. Sealed. Complete. Diana explained the terms one final time. No contact. No appeals. No second chances. Violation meant immediate criminal prosecution. No exceptions. Ethan and Claire stood. They looked smaller somehow. Diminished. Like the air had been let out of them. Claire tried to speak to me. Tried to say something. Anything. I looked through her. Past her. Like she was glass. Like she was nothing. They left the conference room in silence. The door closed with a soft click. Final. Absolute. Marcus collected the folders. Sarah packed her notary seal. They left with murmured goodbyes and professional discretion. Diana and I sat alone in the conference room. 21 stories above the city. The morning sun bright through the windows. She asked if I was all right. If I needed anything. I told her I was fine. Better than fine. I was free. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The elevator descended in silence. 21 floors. Diana and I stood side by side. Our reflections caught in the polished steel doors. Two women who'd just dismantled a family. The lobby was busy with morning traffic. Lawyers, clients, delivery people, everyone moving with purpose, everyone occupied with their own crises. No one looked at us. No one knew what had just happened 21 floors above them. Diana's car was in the underground garage. Level 3. The concrete walls held the cold. Our footsteps echoed in the emptiness. She unlocked the doors. We sat in leather seats that still smelled new. The engine started with a quiet purr. Diana asked where I wanted to go. Home or somewhere else. Somewhere to process. Somewhere to breathe. I told her home. There was work to be done. The foundation needed establishing. Robert's legacy needed building. We drove through downtown in comfortable silence. The city looked the same as it had an hour ago. Buildings, traffic lights, people crossing streets. But everything had changed. Ethan and Claire were gone. Erased. Cut out like cancer. The relief should have been immediate. Complete. Instead, something heavy settled in my chest. Not regret. Not exactly. Something closer to grief for what should have been. Diana seemed to sense it. She said what I'd done was necessary. She said some people couldn't be saved. Only stopped. I knew she was right. Knowledge didn't make it lighter. We reached my house at 11:30. Diana walked me to the door. She said she'd file all the paperwork this afternoon. The foundation documents, the house transfer, the restraining orders. Everything would be official by Friday. Legal, permanent, irreversible. She hugged me before leaving. Brief, firm, the kind of hug that acknowledged pain without dwelling on it. Her car pulled away. The street was quiet. Mid-morning, most people at work. A few leaves skittered across the pavement. Brown, dead, waiting for someone to rake them. Inside, the house felt different. Lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from the walls themselves. I made tea. Earl Grey, Robert's favorite. The ritual was soothing. Boiling water. Steeping time. The bergamot smell filling the kitchen. I carried the cup to the living room. Sat in Robert's chair. The leather creaked under my weight. Familiar. Comforting. The paintings hung on every wall. Still there. Still safe. Robert's spirit captured in canvas and color. Claire would never touch them now. Would never reduce them to auction lots and commission percentages. The Montana landscape. The portrait with his mother's eyes. The abstract chaos made beautiful. All of it preserved. All of it protected. All of it staying exactly where Robert had placed it. My phone rang at noon. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. A woman's voice came through. Professional. Efficient. She identified herself as Amanda Chen from Atlantic City Recovery Services. The private lenders. The dangerous ones. The $200,000 debt. Amanda said she was calling about the Turner account. Payment was due November 1st. She wanted to confirm arrangements. I told her I wasn't responsible for that debt. I explained about Ethan, about the signed documents, about the complete financial separation. Amanda's voice cooled immediately. She said the debt was still owed. She said her company would pursue collection through all available means. I gave her Diana's contact information. Told her to direct all future calls to my attorney. Then I hung up. Their problem now. Not mine. Never mine again. The afternoon passed quietly. I worked on foundation planning. Diana had sent preliminary documents by email. Mission statements. Board structure. Grant procedures. The Robert Turner Foundation would support two causes: young artists and animal welfare. The things Robert had cared about beyond business and family. He'd loved art but never had time to create it. He'd loved animals but work left no space for pets. Now his money would do what his life couldn't. Grants for emerging painters. Scholarships for art students. Funding for animal shelters and rescue organizations. Sanctuary support. Veterinary care for low-income families. Good work. Meaningful work. Work that would outlive all of us. I drafted descriptions for each program. Kept Robert's voice in mind. Practical. Direct. No waste. No bureaucracy. Just help where help was needed. By 4 o'clock, my eyes were tired from the computer screen. My shoulders ached from sitting. Old body. Old complaints. But the work was done. I printed everything. 30 pages. Single-sided. Diana preferred hard copies for review. Said screens missed too much. The printer hummed and clicked. Pages emerged one at a time. Each one a piece of Robert's continuing legacy. Evening came early. October light fading by 5. I made dinner. Simple. Pasta with olive oil and garlic. A salad. Food as fuel. Eating alone at the kitchen counter. No reason to set the table. No one to share the meal with. Robert had hated eating at counters. Said meals belonged at tables. With proper plates and silverware. With conversation and time. But Robert was gone. And I was adapting. Learning to live in a house that held only me. The dishes washed quickly. One plate. One bowl. One fork. The efficiency of solitude. I settled into the living room with decaf tea. The evening news played on television. Mostly sound. Background noise. Company without demanding attention. My phone rang again at 7. Diana this time. She'd filed everything. The foundation was officially pending. The house transfer was recorded. The restraining orders were active. Ethan and Claire had 48 hours to vacate their property. After that, sheriff's deputies would remove them. Their belongings would go to storage at their expense. Diana had also heard from Amanda Chen. The Atlantic City lenders. They were threatening legal action against Ethan and Claire. Potentially criminal action. That wasn't my concern anymore. Diana would monitor the situation. Make sure they didn't try to drag me into their collapse. We hung up after confirming tomorrow's meeting. Diana wanted to review foundation bylaws. Make sure everything was airtight. Make sure Robert's money went exactly where intended. The television continued its background murmur. Politics. Weather. Sports. The rhythm of daily news. Nothing that touched me directly. I thought about Ethan as a child. 7 years old. Gap-toothed smile. He'd helped Robert wash the trucks on Saturdays. Got soaked with the hose. Laughed until he couldn't breathe. That child had become a man who researched how to kill his mother. Somewhere in the years between, something had broken. Something had twisted. Maybe the money did it. Maybe the pressure. Maybe he'd always been this way and I'd been too blind to see it. The why didn't matter anymore. Only the what. Only the actions. Only the choices he'd made. 9 o'clock arrived. My usual bedtime. Old habits. Old body demanding rest. I locked the doors. Checked the windows. Another habit from living alone. Robert had always handled security. Now it fell to me. Upstairs, the bedroom was dark and quiet. I changed into pajamas. Washed my face. Brushed my teeth. The rituals of ending a day. The bed felt enormous. King-sized. Robert's side still empty after 4 years. I'd never moved to the center. Still slept on my side. Still left space for a ghost. Sleep came surprisingly easy. No dreams. No nightmares. Just deep, dark rest. The kind of sleep that comes after finishing something difficult. After surviving something that could have destroyed you. Thursday morning arrived with sun. Rare for late October. The light through the curtains was warm and golden. I woke feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Since before the restaurant. Since before the poison. Since before I'd learned what my son had become. The betrayal was still there. The grief. The loss. But underneath it was something solid. Something unbreakable. I'd survived. I'd fought back. I'd won. Robert would have been proud. Not of the situation. Not of what Ethan had become. But of how I'd handled it. Surgical. Strategic. Complete. Diana arrived at 10 for the bylaw review. We worked until noon. Refined language. Clarified procedures. Made everything bulletproof. The foundation would launch officially in 2 weeks. November 15th. Press release. Website. Grant applications opening. Robert's name would live on. Not in scandal. Not in poisoning attempts and family destruction. But in paint and canvas. In rescued animals. In futures made possible. That was legacy. That was what mattered. That was what survived when bodies failed and families fractured. I signed the final documents at noon. Diana witnessed. Made it official. Made it real. The Robert Turner Foundation existed now. Permanent. Protected. Perfect. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Friday morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Diana's voice was measured when she spoke. Ethan and Claire had vacated the house. Thursday afternoon, 1 day before the deadline. They'd taken what they could carry. Left everything else behind. The property was now foundation assets. Furniture. Appliances. 2 cars still in the garage. Everything abandoned in their rush to escape. Diana asked if I wanted to see it. Walk through before the estate sale. Before strangers picked through the remains of my son's life. I told her no. There was nothing there I needed to see. Nothing there that belonged to me anymore. She understood. Said the sale would happen next week. Proceeds going directly to the foundation. Every dollar. Every cent. We ended the call with plans to meet Monday. Foundation business. Grant review procedures. The work of building something that would last. The weekend stretched ahead empty. Saturday. Sunday. Just me in the house and the paintings on the walls. I spent Saturday cleaning. Thorough. Deep. The kind of cleaning that erases presence. That removes the last traces of what was. I washed windows until they disappeared. Scrubbed floors until they shined. Dusted every surface. Every corner. Every forgotten space. Physical work. Exhausting work. The kind that left no room for thinking. For remembering. For grieving what should have been. By evening, my knees ached. My back protested. My hands were red from hot water and chemicals. But the house gleamed. Fresh. Clean. Ready for whatever came next. Sunday was quieter. I attended early service at the Methodist Church. 8 o'clock. The sanctuary was half empty. Mostly older congregants. People who remembered when early service was the only service. Pastor Williams preached about forgiveness. About letting go of anger. About moving forward without bitterness. The irony wasn't lost on me. But I listened. Considered. Tried to find some kernel of wisdom that applied. Forgiveness felt impossible. Too big. Too soon. Maybe someday. Maybe never. But letting go was different. Letting go was survival. I'd already let go of Ethan. Let go of Claire. Let go of the family I'd thought I had. Now I was learning to let go of the anger. The betrayal. The weight of it all. Not forgiveness. Just release. Just exhaling something I'd been holding too long. After church, I drove to the cemetery. First time in 2 months. Longer than usual. Guilt pricked at my conscience. Robert's grave was in the newer section. Row 12. Plot 23. The headstone was simple. Gray granite. His name. His dates. Beloved husband and father. That last word felt bitter now. Father. What kind of father raised a son who planned matricide? What kind of father's legacy produced poison and debt and desperation? But that wasn't Robert's fault. He'd worked himself to exhaustion providing for Ethan. He'd paid for schools, for college, for the wedding, for the house down payment. He'd given everything, and somehow it still wasn't enough. Or it was too much. Or it was exactly the wrong thing. Parenting had no guarantees, no instruction manual, no promise that love and sacrifice would produce good adults. I sat on the stone bench beside Robert's grave. Cold granite. October chill. The cemetery was empty. Just me and the dead and the geese honking overhead. I told Robert everything, out loud, quiet voice. But speaking the words made them real. Made them final. The restaurant. The poison. The evidence. The confrontation. The signatures. The exile. His silence was complete. Permanent. But I felt him listening somehow. Felt his presence in the October air. In the way the light fell through the trees. I told him about the foundation. The grants. The artists. The animals. The way his money would become color and hope and rescued lives. That part felt right. That part felt like him. Building something. Creating something. Leaving the world slightly better than he'd found it. I sat until the cold seeped through my coat. Until my feet went numb. Until I'd said everything that needed saying. The drive home took 15 minutes. Quiet streets. Sunday afternoon. Families inside watching football, eating leftovers, living their normal lives. My phone showed 3 missed calls when I got home. All from the same unknown number. No voicemails. Just persistent ringing. The 4th call came at 4:30. I answered this time, ready for whatever came next. A man's voice. Deep. Measured. Professional menace. He said his name was Marcus Webb. Not the paralegal from Diana's office. Different Marcus. Dangerous Marcus. He represented the Atlantic City investors. The private lenders. The people Ethan owed $200,000. Marcus said the debt was in default. Payment was overdue. His clients were pursuing collection through all available channels. I told him again what I'd told Amanda Chen. I wasn't responsible. The debt was Ethan's. The signed documents proved complete financial separation. Marcus said he understood my position. But his clients had a different perspective. Family debt was family debt. Blood relations implied shared responsibility. His tone stayed calm, almost pleasant, but the threat underneath was clear. They would pursue this. They would collect, one way or another. I gave him Diana's information again. Told him all future contact must go through my attorney. Any attempt to contact me directly would be documented, reported, prosecuted if necessary. Marcus chuckled, low, knowing. He said attorneys couldn't solve every problem. Some situations required more practical solutions. Then he hung up. The line went dead. Silence filled the space where his voice had been. My hands were shaking. First time since the restaurant. First time since I'd seen the poison being poured. These weren't people who accepted legal documents. These weren't people who respected boundaries. These were people who broke kneecaps and burned houses and disappeared problems. I called Diana immediately. Told her about Marcus Webb. About the threats. About the practical solutions he'd mentioned. Diana's voice went hard. She said she'd contact law enforcement. Document everything. Pursue harassment charges if they continued. But we both knew that might not be enough. Legal protection only worked if people feared legal consequences. These people operated outside that system. Diana said she'd hire security. Someone to watch my house. Someone to ensure my safety. At least until this situation resolved. I agreed. Pride seemed foolish when faced with professional criminals. Robert had never let pride override common sense. Neither would I. The security company sent someone that evening. 7 o'clock. A woman named Officer Sarah Martinez. Retired police. 20 years on the force. She looked capable, alert, unafraid. Sarah walked through my house. Checked locks, windows, sight lines. She installed motion sensors at the doors. Gave me a panic button for my keychain. She said she'd be parked outside tonight. Watching. If anything seemed wrong, I should press the button. She'd be inside within seconds. The precautions felt excessive, but also necessary. Welcome. I thanked her and offered coffee. She accepted. We sat at the kitchen table like old friends. Sarah asked about my situation. Not details, just enough to understand the threat level. I gave her the basics. Family betrayal, criminal debt, dangerous creditors. She nodded, said she'd seen this pattern before. Desperate people borrowing from worse people. Families caught in the crossfire. It rarely ended cleanly, but she'd keep me safe. That was her job. That was what she did. And she was very good at her job. Sarah left at 8, walked to her car. A dark SUV parked 3 houses down. Good sight lines. Close enough to respond. Far enough to seem casual. I locked the doors behind her. Double-checked every window. Drew the curtains. Made the house a fortress. The evening passed slowly. Television played unwatched. A book lay open unread. My mind couldn't settle. Couldn't rest. Every sound outside drew my attention. Car door. Dog bark. Wind rattling branches. Each one could be nothing. Each one could be everything. Midnight came. Then 1. Then 2. Sleep felt impossible. But eventually exhaustion won. I drifted off in Robert's chair. Sitting upright. Half awake. Half ready. The panic button stayed in my hand. Cold metal. Small salvation. Proof I wasn't helpless. Proof I'd learned to fight back. Dawn came gray and reluctant. Monday morning. November 2nd. The dangerous deadline had passed. Whatever happened to Ethan and Claire now was their consequence. Their problem. Their fate. Mine was survival. Mine was vigilance. Mine was learning to live in a world where family meant danger and strangers meant safety. The foundation would launch in 13 days. Robert's legacy would bloom despite everything. Despite poison. Despite betrayal. Despite threats from men with practical solutions. I'd survived this long. I'd survive longer. That was the only choice that mattered. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. 3 months passed like water through fingers. November became December. December became January. Winter settled over the city with its usual gray determination. The threats from Atlantic City stopped after 2 weeks. Diana had involved federal authorities. Interstate loan sharking. Racketeering charges. The investigation was ongoing. Marcus Webb and his clients went quiet. Ethan and Claire disappeared completely. No forwarding address. No contact. No trace. Diana's investigators heard rumors. Florida. Maybe Nevada. Somewhere warm and far away. Somewhere to start over with nothing. Their house sold at auction. Furniture. Cars. Everything liquidated. The foundation received $43,000 after liens and fees. Not much, but something. Another brick in Robert's legacy. Sarah Martinez stayed for 3 weeks. Then the danger level dropped. The security company scaled back. Now it was just occasional drive-bys. Random checks. Enough to deter. Not enough to imprison. I learned to sleep without the panic button. Learned to hear ordinary sounds without flinching. Learned that survival meant more than just staying alive. It meant reclaiming normalcy. The Robert Turner Foundation launched November 15. Press release. Local news coverage. A small ceremony at Diana's office. No family attended. Just Diana, her staff, a few of Robert's old friends. People who remembered him as he actually was. Not as Ethan had tried to reduce him to. The first grants went out before Christmas. 3 artists. 2 animal shelters. Each check carried Robert's name. Each one planted his memory in soil that would grow something beautiful. January brought snow. Real snow. 8 inches overnight. The city slowed. Schools closed. Everything went white and quiet. I hired a neighborhood kid to shovel my driveway. 17 years old. Saving for college. He worked hard. Efficiently. Reminded me of Robert at that age. When he finished, I paid him double. Told him to save it. Told him education mattered more than anything. He thanked me. Disappeared into the snow. Probably thought I was just another generous old lady. Maybe I was. Maybe that was enough. Diana called in mid-January. She had news. Ethan and Claire had filed for bankruptcy. Chapter 7. Complete liquidation. Their credit was destroyed. Their financial life erased. The Atlantic City debt was included in the filing. Marcus Webb's clients would receive pennies on the dollar. If anything at all. Bankruptcy court didn't care about private enforcers or practical solutions. Diana said it was over. Finally. Completely. They had nothing left to take. Nothing left to fight over. They were ghosts now. Legally. Financially. Permanently. I felt nothing when she told me. No satisfaction. No relief. Just emptiness where family used to be. The foundation work filled the void. Applications arrived daily. Artists needing supplies. Students needing tuition. Shelters needing veterinary equipment. Sanctuaries needing operating funds. Diana hired a program director. Woman named Jennifer Tam. Early 40s. Art degree. Nonprofit experience. She understood both the creative world and the practical realities of grant administration. Jennifer and I met weekly. Reviewed applications. Discussed criteria. Made decisions about who received funding and why. Every choice felt important. Every dollar represented Robert's sweat. His hours. His sacrifice. It had to matter. It had to count. It had to be worthy of his memory. We funded a young painter in Baltimore. Her work showed cityscapes transformed by light. Buildings becoming cathedrals. Alleys becoming galleries. Beauty found in forgotten places. We funded a sculpture student in Vermont. His pieces used reclaimed metal. Old car parts. Discarded machinery. Turning rust into art. Giving new life to what others threw away. We funded an animal sanctuary in rural Pennsylvania. 50 acres. Horses. Goats. Pigs. All of them rescued from abuse or neglect. All of them given safety. Space. Time to heal. Each grant came with a requirement. A photo. A story. Something to document the impact. Something to prove Robert's money became more than numbers. Became life. Became hope. Jennifer compiled everything into quarterly reports. Professional. Detailed. Charts showing dollars distributed. Lives touched. Futures changed. I read every word. Studied every photograph. Saw Robert in each success. Heard his voice in each story of someone getting a chance they wouldn't have had otherwise. February brought the first gallery exhibition funded by foundation grants. Small space in the Arts District. 3 emerging artists. All under 30. All struggling. All talented. The opening was on a Friday evening. Jennifer invited me. Said the artists wanted to meet the woman behind the foundation. The widow who'd turned grief into opportunity. I almost declined. Public events exhausted me. Too many people. Too much noise. Too much energy required. But something pulled me there. Curiosity maybe. Or duty. Or the need to see Robert's legacy living and breathing instead of just existing on paper. The gallery was warm despite the winter cold outside. Exposed brick. Track lighting. Wine in plastic cups. Cheese on paper plates. The standard gallery reception setup. Paintings lined the walls. Vibrant. Bold. Alive. Each one showed a different vision. A different voice. A different way of seeing the world. A young woman approached me. Late 20s. Braids. Paint under her fingernails. She introduced herself as Keisha Williams. One of the grant recipients. She said the foundation grant had changed everything. Allowed her to quit her restaurant job. Focus on painting full-time. Finish this series that had been living in her head for 3 years. Her work showed women. Black women. Old women. Their faces mapped with time. Their eyes holding stories. Strength rendered in oil and canvas. One painting caught my attention immediately. A woman in her 70s. Sitting in a kitchen. Hands wrapped around a coffee cup. Light streaming through a window behind her. The woman's face showed exhaustion. But also determination. The kind that comes from surviving things that should have broken you. Keisha said the model was her grandmother. 73. Raised 6 kids alone. Worked 2 jobs for 40 years. Never complained. Never quit. Just endured and endured and endured. I looked at that painting for a long time. Saw my own reflection in that woman's eyes. Saw every widow who'd kept going after their partner died. Every mother who'd survived their children's betrayals. I told Keisha the painting was extraordinary. Told her she'd captured something essential. Something true. Something that mattered. She asked if I wanted to buy it. Foundation policy said no. Grant recipients owned their work. Could sell it. Keep the proceeds. Build their careers. I said yes anyway. Wrote a personal check. Not foundation money. My money. Robert's money. But mine to spend as I chose. The painting now hangs in my bedroom. Across from the bed. First thing I see each morning. Last thing I see each night. That woman's face reminds me what I've survived. What I've endured. What I've become in the process of refusing to break. March arrived with early warmth. False spring. The kind that tricks flowers into blooming before the last frost kills them. I turned 71 on March 12th. Birthday falling on a Tuesday. Unremarkable. Ordinary. Another year survived. Diana took me to lunch. Same restaurant where Ethan had tried to poison me. My choice. My way of reclaiming a space that fear had marked. We sat at a different table. Different server. Different everything. But the chandeliers still glowed. The silverware still whispered. The room still breathed elegance and expense. I ordered cranberry juice. Same as before. But this time I watched it being poured. Watched it sitting on the table. drank it without hesitation, without fear. Diana raised her wine glass in a toast. To survival, to justice, to Robert's legacy growing stronger every day. I lifted my glass, clinked it against hers. The sound was bright and clear. We talked about the foundation, new applications, success stories, plans for expanding the grant program, maybe adding scholarships, maybe funding arts education in schools. Robert's $58 million would last generations if managed properly. And Diana managed everything properly. That was her nature, her gift, her way of honoring the man who'd been like a father to her. After lunch, I walked through the city alone. Spring sunshine, light jacket, no destination, just movement, just being alive in the world. I passed the old warehouse district where Robert's first office had been. All condos now, expensive, renovated, the grit and grease scrubbed away, made acceptable for people who'd never worked with their hands. But I remembered it as it was. 3 trucks, 2 employees, Robert's impossible dream that somehow became real through sheer force of will. That was legacy. Not blood, not family, not children who carried your name but not your values. Legacy was what you built, what you left behind, what kept growing after you were gone. Robert's legacy was paint on canvas. Animals rescued, futures funded, beauty created, hope distributed, love made practical and permanent. I walked until my knees ached. Until the sun started sinking. Until the March air turned cold again. Then I went home, to the house we'd shared, to the paintings on the walls, to the life I'd rebuilt from ruins. At 71, I was still here, still standing, still becoming whatever came next. The circle wasn't closing, it was widening, opening, expanding to include strangers who would never know Robert's name but would benefit from his work. From our work. From what we'd built together and what I was building still. That night, I sat in his chair. Our chair now. The leather worn soft by decades of living. Outside, stars appeared one by one. Patient. Eternal. Witnessing everything. Judging nothing. I was alone, but not lonely. Alone by choice, by necessity, by survival. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.